I am one of 4 kids. My older brother P, who I no longer have any contact with, my younger brother J, who is no longer with us, and my youngest sister K. Recently P's children, 2 girls and 1 boy, all in their late teens and early 20s, reached out to me and expressed a desire to have a relationship. I have 0 contact with their father and swore that I would beat him black and blue if I ever saw him again. My oldest brother P was always the golden child. No matter what he did, my parents always had an excuse for why it was not his fault. Bad grade? Teacher had it out for him. Cheating on every single one of his relationships? Good thing you did it to her before she did it to you. That one was my personal favorite. He also used to torment Jay and I constantly when we were smaller than him, until in high school, when I hit a growth spurt and sprung up to about 6 feet 4 inches and 230 pounds worth of muscle. After that I became the typical jock type. Played football, partied, bunch of friends, etc. Well, my younger brother, Jay, didn't get as lucky and stayed pretty small and scrawny throughout high school and college, only getting up to about 5 feet 8 inches, and didn't have a super active social life. Despite the difference in our schooling experience, I was always very protective of Jay, especially since we were always having to put up with P's bullshit, which stopped once he realized I could pound him into the ground and not break a sweat, as he was also a lot smaller than me at only 5 feet 10 inches. Not much to say about Kay. She was a great younger sister and P didn't dare mess with her or he would incur the wrath of our mother. So, in the late 90s, Jay met his first real girlfriend, A, and was over the moon about her. He spent every spare moment with her, and when he wasn't with her, he would do nothing but gush about her. I had never seen him so happy. Well, one day, he comes to us, all smiles, and announces that A is pregnant and they are expecting. The mood quickly turned, however, when a week later it came out that A had been cheating on Jay for the duration of their relationship with our older brother P. This broke my brother, and of course P, being the golden shit that he is, didn't even get a disappointed glance from our parents. To this day I have never seen someone look so broken as Jay had looked the last time I saw him. I believe his heartache was only compounded by the fact that my parents basically told him to get over it and be happy for our brother. Well, about a week after this revelation came to light, Jay took his own life. I had never been so sad and angry at the same time in my entire life. Sad that I would never see my brother again, and the pure rage of knowing that this was my brother and parents' fault. During the funeral, P walked in with A and I saw red. Thankfully I had other family there to stop me from doing anything stupid, but I told P that if I ever saw him again, I would kill him. Shortly after that, I cut contact with 90% of my family, with the exception of K and a cousin I had always been close with, because everyone except them wanted to make excuses for my parents and P. Even though my sister was just as crushed about Jay's death as I was and was angry for a long time. She and her then boyfriend, future husband, hit a financial rough patch after graduating college and were forced to move in with our parents. Due to unrelated drama at the time, they couldn't stay with me. So my sister stayed with them for several years, and over that time their relationship improved, and even though I wasn't thrilled at the time, I understood. She still doesn't really have a relationship with P, but is cordial if they meet. I don't blame her, because our parents did a lot for her and daughters love their cousins. So I didn't want to put her in that kind of position of choosing. I never had any kids, and truth be told, I never wanted any. I much preferred the role of the fun uncle. Kay met a great guy and had 2 daughters, who I absolutely adore. P had 2 more kids with A before cheating on her and splitting, and I've never met any of them. My parents have tried to make contact a handful of times, but I always told them to kick rocks. So last week, I'm chatting with Kay's daughters, 19 and 17. And they mentioned that their cousins have wanted to meet me for a long time and were hoping I would be willing to meet them as well. I don't believe they know everything that transpired between their dad and I, but I would be lying if I said I never had any desire to meet them. I am a 43 years old female, have been with my partner, he's 50, for 6 years now. We have been living together for 5 of them. We are not married and we do not plan to marry in the future. I have a son, he's 19, that is currently a high school senior. My partner has a daughter, she's 21, who is going to college. When I met my partner, I was a widow of 3 years. I am lucky enough to have a very lucrative business and some family money. Also, my late husband left a substantial estate, including the house we live in. The house is a family home, so it passed to my son as the only heir. My partner also makes good money, and the difference in our lifestyles was pretty much negligible. But while I and my late husband made sure to not spoil our son, he was responsible for keeping his room clean. Even though we have a housekeeper, he had chores during the weekends. We taught him how to cook, his allowance is reasonable, he has to save for expensive purchases like a car, a PS5, etc. My current partner and his ex-wife spoil their daughter rotten. Due to an incident when we first moved in together, she demanded my son's bedroom since it was the second biggest. Got rejected since it was his home and she only spends the weekend. And after some family therapy, we agreed that she will be treated like a guest by me. She will have to follow the house rules, and that at the extent of our relationship. Now, while she is spoiled, she is a good girl, academically excellent. Except for the aforementioned incident, very respectful and just a pleasant young woman. The problem is that I did not know the extent to which my partner spent money on her. He pays some money as rent that I put into my son's college fund, and we split the common bills in half. Everything else is our own responsibility, so we don't know much about each other's finances. Now my son is planning to do a tour of East Asia during the summer, and I was happy to give him the money to do so, as a gift for getting into a very prestigious college. When my stepdaughter heard about it, she asked her dad to pay for a tour of Europe, since he didn't send her on one after she got into college. He agreed because he never says no. But he came to me asking me to lend him close to $30,000 because he can't afford the trip on his own. I am not even giving that much to my son, and his plane tickets are more expensive. I refused. I said that since this wasn't an emergency, he can save and send her on the trip after she graduates college. Now he is not talking to me, saying that I am choosing favorites. I have no relationship with his daughter, so I don't know how that even is applicable. And that I am putting money over his happiness and relationship with his daughter. I can easily afford to lend him the full amount, I just don't want to, because his reasons are not convincing enough. I met her 2 years ago when we worked together and quickly became very close. She helped me through the darkest times of my life. I was mid-split with an abusive ex when we met. And I helped her through some really tough and unimaginable things. There were lots of rumors at the time we were seeing each other, and everyone assumed we were an item. But for the past 2 years our relationship has been purely platonic. She was my best friend, and up until a few weeks back I don't think we'd even ever hugged. Fast forward to a week ago, she came over for dinner and wine. This is very common and normal. We had more than usual, and she was over the limit, so couldn't drive, so she stayed the night. We slept in the same bed but apart, and no physical contact again. It was completely normal and just as expected. We somehow didn't get up and ended up staying in bed until 10 p.m. the next day just talking. Sometime during that evening she got upset about something going on in her life. I rubbed her back while telling her everything will be okay, and then we just cuddled. Probably the first bit of real physical contact between us, but nothing was sexual. Didn't feel weird, and she went home and it was all okay. This last weekend we had a hiking holiday planned, where we'd be sleeping in her van. She has a converted Transit. It's one bed, but we thought we'd be fine. First night it was freezing, ending up cuddling and spooning, but again didn't feel sexual. Second night is where it all went a bit wrong. We drank a bit too much and the spoon ended up getting carried away. It seems to be a joint thing, and before I knew it we were kissing and touching each other everywhere. It was a bit of a frenzy of this for about 15 minutes until we both stopped and realized what we just did. After this we spoke a little and asked if either of us regretted it. We both said we didn't, but it was odd. She got upset and I told her it was okay, it didn't change anything and we could just draw a line under it. We woke up the next morning and it happened again. We didn't talk too much, but then went for a walk, and then just before we headed home we ended up all over each other again. We were completely naked but again stopped, cuddled and lay there. We both agreed it was a what happens in X, stays in X type event. It was a really long trip home, 6 hours plus. During this she would rest her head on my hand on lap ECT, and it seemed very different to our usual dynamic. When we stopped at services for breaks we seemed to walk arm in arm. We kept kissing on and off, but it seemed strangely normal. We arrived back at her home. She lives with her dad at the moment, but just before I left she kissed me again and thanked me for a wonderful weekend. The following day she came over to get some stuff I took home with me. We end up just cuddling, kissing, feeling and so on again, but she has dinner with a friend and we stop it there. She goes on her way. This should feel really weird and strange, but it felt completely normal and we both discussed it that it was so odd it felt normal. Yesterday she turned up unannounced at my place, which is not a normal thing, with coffee and donuts. We end up talking, cuddling, kissing again, and then we end up talking about what this is, the big problem. Neither of us were sure. She got panicky and burst out in tears and left. She said she was really scared and her words were, "I think I will end up pushing you away and hurting you and I don't want to do that to you." I told her I would come and see her later and talk. I drove to her house, but her ex was there, another slight issue. They broke up 6 years ago, stayed close friends. He is a lovely bloke, but in his head he is certain they will get married and have children. She's had the conversation with him, but he seems to shut it off. If he found out she was seeing anyone he would get extremely angry. But there's so much family history intertwined between the both, it's really complicated. For that reason she has avoided seeing anyone in the past 6 years. The reason he turned up is she hadn't responded to him since the night we kissed. I went home when I saw his car and just said she could come to mine to chat later. She turned up, sad and very emotional. She explained she ran off because she is terrified of losing our friendship. I said let's just cut the romance out, draw a line under it and be friends again, but she seemed to not speak much when I said this. I asked if her ex was the issue. She said it was nothing to do with us but a whole other issue. But that was not impacting what was going on between us. We sat quietly, hugged, and I tried to reassure it would be okay, and I wasn't going to start hating her for whatever reason. And I am completely fine with just being platonic friends again. We both agree and say whatever happens we stay friends and nobody gets hurt, but we will pull back from the more physical side. I woke up this morning really panicky. I have no idea where we are, where we stand, and absolutely terrified of losing our friendship. I don't know what to do or say. I felt sick to my stomach and can't eat at the thought of this. She is coming around later to collect some of her clothes she left last night, and I am thinking I need a plan of what to say / do. I cannot lose my best friend. She is absolutely everything to me, but I am worried we crossed a line and there's only one eventual outcome which won't be good. I am a 19 years old female. I have an estranged grandpa, more or less. He's my dad's father, but my dad hardly had a relationship with him. I have 2 other siblings, one younger and one older. My grandma divorced my grandpa when my dad was only 10. So he lived with my grandma his whole life in a different state and didn't see him. When he got older he saw him a little more, and my grandpa started coming around a little bit more as well. He'd stay for a week at a time and then go home. He was an old, bitter man, to be honest. He never got remarried and lived his whole life in his coastal town with the same friends he'd had his whole life. He wasn't pleasant to be around and could hold grudges longer than anyone I've ever met. But regardless of this, he was filthy rich. He owned a successful business that he sold for $1 million. He retired after selling, but his house sits on an island as well as the biggest piece of land on the island. So it sold for well over $3 million. I was never close with my grandpa, but I took after his sister who is in right now, and he adores her. He always told me that he was proud to see me follow in her footsteps. He died a few months ago. Since then, my family has been torn apart. He left everything to me. He essentially liquidated all of his assets and it ended up being close to $8 million. I was shocked. I didn't and still don't know what to do with the money, but I'm going to save it. My dad and stepmom as well as my siblings are hounding me to split the money with them. I just can't do it. My dad is an alcoholic who never said anything nice about his dad. Despite him being bitter, my grandpa actually bought my dad a $300,000 house. My dad would 100% drink away any money given to him. As far as my siblings, my brother has full financial support from my grandma as he is the favorite, and he's very wasteful and ungrateful. He never talks to me and always is very mean to me when he does. My little sister is the only person I've actually considered. She's very young and that's really the only thing stopping me. Her mom is money-oriented and would take the money from her. So I'm waiting until she turns 18 and I offered to pay for her college. But now my family is telling me I'm unfair and the money doesn't belong to me and I'm not deserving of it. That I'm too young and I'll waste it on cars and clothes. I don't agree, and now they're all threatening to cut me off and never speak to me. Or even sue me if I don't give them all a chunk of the money. I don't know what to do and I'm buckling under pressure here. I've already had 2 police officers out to my house because my dad is claiming I stole the money from him. Everything was through an attorney. I know I did nothing wrong legally. But morally?